Welcome to our Torah Anytime viewers. We are in Parshat Noach, but after a episode that we all know happened in the time of Simchat Torah, we've been getting a number of questions. So I decided to have a half halachic, half hashkafic discussion about how to relate to the war that just occurred here in Tafshin Pei Daled, which directly connects with Parshat Noach. And that is that many people were asking after the cruelties and everything that was going through, that would happen, a horrible day, especially this occurred 1 or 2 days afterwards where people were still feeling the pain and anxiety of what was going on. But even now, a couple weeks later, we still feel the pain of the Shvuyim also. First of all, the pain of all the families that are just getting up from Shiva. But besides that, all the people that are captives, all the people that are captives in the land. As I mentioned in the Shir in the Parsha, it says, Vayimale Haaretz Chametz, it's referring to Shvuyim, that's what the Uncle says. And many people are living in terrible pain and anxiety, don't know what's going to be with their loved ones, as we know. And it's really a distressing time in the middle of a very big war. We don't know, as they say, Ma Yeled Yom, what's going to be with tomorrow. And it's interesting to note that here in Parshas Noach, in Perek Zayin, in Pasuk Zayin, over here, when it's discussing the building of the ark. So over there, it is mentioned the idea of that when he was not Osik and Tashmish the whole entire year at the time that it was done, the whole entire year of the Anashim Levad ve'Anashim Levad. Noach ubanav. What does it mean in the pasuk when it says Noach Levadu? Why does it separate them in different ways? Hanashim levad ve'nashim levad, says Rashi based on the Tanchuma. They would, since the world was in a mabul, was in a bad situation, they couldn't go ahead and be busy with doing things, as Rashi points out in one place, has to do with a certain amount of tzar. A person has to be in tzar when everybody else is together with tzar, and therefore it was inappropriate for them to do it. Rashi repeats himself also in Perek Chet, Pasuk Ted Zayin, that over here at the time when he was walking out of the teva, it says, go out to Tavi Ishtecha, Ish ve'ishto, go out, you and your wife, Kan Yiter Lehem Tashmish Mita. Over here it suddenly became permitted now that they can again go back and resume normal family life as it is. So we see from here a concept of the idea of separation, or if I could say in a more global sense, not having overabundance of enjoyments during the time when the world is in a time of tzar, when many people or our nation is going through a very difficult time. It would make sense maybe to fast or to have certain separations that are necessary. So one person even asked me if maybe he should be having meat. They wanted to have a meat supper, and they thought maybe this was the day after it occurred. Maybe we shouldn't be enjoying ourselves and having a meaty supper. And the question is there validity to such a thing? So this really goes into a Gemara in Ta'anit, and Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. It's good to see it over there. Basically over there, Reish Lakish says that during the time of a starvation, when there's a famine in the world, so one is not allowed to have marital relations. Shenamar, where's it learned from? From Yosef, because it says Yosef had 2 children. B'terem tavo Shnat Harav. He had his 2 children before the Shnat Harav, but once the Shnat Harav came, apparently he stopped. That's the additional part in the pasuk, is they're coming to tell us that he was not going to have it. However, the Gemara does say, someone who doesn't have any children, then they are permitted, because obviously for the sake of Puravu, which is a big mitzvah deraita, so for that sake one is permitted to go ahead and have relations. And that's what the Gemara says. However, the Gemara seems to make a more global approach about this whole idea. It's not limited only to a famine and only to this one prisha, one separation, because the Gemara over there goes, the schar that a person gets when he separates himself from when he does separations at the time when Bnei Yisrael are going through Sar, Nitzol B'mita Meshuna. So he'll be saved from a very difficult death, Lo Aleinu. And Rashi says, Shetzarich Litzte'er Metzibur, like I mentioned before. The Rashi says you have to go out of your way to be Mitzar B'tzibur. The Meiri says a more specific thing. He says that the world is being destroyed, so you should not be procreative at the time when they're being controlled. That obviously is limited to relations, but Rashi is giving much more of an overall approach, and that is, you shouldn't be having any type of overabundant enjoyment. It doesn't have to suffer. We're not telling you to have to fast 24 hours a day, but you shouldn't be having overabundance of enjoyment, going on vacations in the middle when people are going through a very difficult time. And that's what the Gemara continues over there. Bisman Shatzibur When the tzibur is in tzar, al yomar adam, a person shouldn't say, I'm going to go to my house, I'm going to eat and drink, have great time, I'm going to go over and enjoy myself. They bring very serious things about it. Someone who says that, I'll go ahead and meat, enjoy myself, and have lamb, and basar and drink a thing. He brings the classic carpe diem line, the pasuk that says, I will eat and drink because tomorrow I will die anyways. In other words, a idea that I don't care, death is here, death is there, it doesn't make any difference to me. He is completely oblivious, indifferent to the situation that is around him, and such a person, the Gemara says, he doesn't even get a kapara until death. Very serious offense. Apparently for someone who is not mitzaref himself, mitzar tzibur, even the Rambam writes, when he talks about the number of things of people who don't get a chelik in olam haba and hilchot tshuva, he brings one of them as someone who's not mitzaref himself in mitzibur, someone who's not noiseh b'ol b'yachad with the rest of the tzibur, so he himself lo aleinu will have will lose his chelik in olam haba kedei kach. And the Gemara over there brings that an example of this, which is what we want to speak about, is Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu at the time of Amalek, it says they put his hands were up and they put rocks underneath his hands. So the Gemara says, what, they didn't have kerem miksasis, they didn't have pillows. I mean, there's also everybody's on rocks over there during the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. Yaakov Avinu sleeping on rocks. I don't know, everybody's on top of rocks back then, but apparently they had such thing as what we call a pillow. And the Gemara says they didn't have kerem miksasis to put under his hands. He says no, when the place is busy and everyone's in the middle of a war, we're in the middle of a war of Amalek, even though he knew that Amalek was going to win, even though he knew Bnei Yisrael was going to win, Moshe Rabbeinu knew it all. He knew 100% that Bnei Yisrael were going to win, and he knew we were going to be on top, and we're going to be successful. Still, he made sure to be Shari B'tzar Shel Tzibur, and even though there were no casualties, B'atzim, he still said that I'm going to go ahead and be part of this machloket, part of this milchama. So Al Kopanim, we see from here an incredible idea. The fact that yes, during a time of a famine, specifically in the Gemara, but apparently from all other tzarot, as the Yushalmi over there brings in Tanit. So really the Gemara only talks about a famine, but the Yushalmi in Tanit and Aleph Vav brings this idea that it applies even to every tzara shelo yavo al tzibur in the Ramah. In Siman Reish Mem Sif Yud Bet. This halacha is brought in two places in Shulchan Aruch. One place is in Siman Reish Mem, which is the halachas of Hilchot Ona at the end of Chelik Bet in the Mishabura. Over there in Siman Reish Mem Yud Bet, the Ramah brings this idea that it's not only B'Shnat Me'avon, El B'Kol Tzar V'Tzar Shelo Yavo Al Tzibur. Shehem Shavim L'Tzar and Al Shel Rav, they're equal to the Tzar of Rav, that when they have a serious danger to our society, so such a thing also applies. That's the Yushalmi, which the Ramah paskins leHalacha. The second place where it's also brought is in Siman Taf Kuf Ayin Dal, it's called Hilchos Tanit. So two places in Hilchot Ona and Hilchos Tanit. So we see that it applies in Taf Kuf Ayin Dalid. That over there also in Siv Dalid Siv Hey, it has brought this halacha based on the Yushalmi that one should be careful in a time of tzara not to do it. Now, what's considered a time of tzara? So the Shari Tzion does bring a Knesset Gedola, which seems to say it has to be similar to Arav, meaning that there is a famine, maybe a Mageifa, some type of plague, but not necessarily war. However, all the poskim disagree with him. The Beit David, the Oilatami, the Lavush, and others, they say it's anything that is referenced to in Tafkuf, Ayin, Vav. In other words, anything that a person would, a city or a place will sit a fast on, and b'chlal that is a number of different things which are mentioned, and one of them, of course, is war. If there's a lack of rain, if there is a big earthquake that causes a lot of a magef, of a plague, if there is a pestilence, dever, some type of dever in the world, and milchama is a few sifim over there. So also a milchama seems to go under this category, but it applies to every single tzar. However, the Shari Tzion I want to mention, which is the Mishabura, Chofetz Chaim does say that even though the Yushalmi does bring it, doesn't say the word asur. It doesn't say the word asur. By famine, it says asur. One cannot indulge, have overindulgences during the time of a famine. However, he says when it comes to other tsar, that's not written in our Bavli. It's brought in the Yushalmi. It doesn't also A and B. It also doesn't say the word asur. So he wants to say that maybe it's a midat chasidut. It's not mamish me'ikar din, and therefore, in a case of need, one can be meko, which we'll mention some examples of one can be lenient, but Al Kopanim he says that's a reason to be lenient. Okay. However, even though the Mishabura says it legabe a famine, legabe other tzarot like a war, however, you should know that even in a famine, It's not so simple that it's also Ikar Din as Mamash the letter of the law, because Tosfot over there asks in the Gemara in Ta'anit, he says, I understand, you're telling me that Yosef Atzadik didn't have relations during the time of a famine, but we know that Yocheved was born Beina Choman. When they were going into Mitzrayim, Yocheved was born. That means that Levi, her father, and Levi had relations 9 months before that, and that was still during the time of the famine. That means it was still a time of the famine. So if it was during the time of famine, how was he able to do it? So he says, from here it seems clear, says Tosfot, and that's why Paskins, that it's only Midat Chasidut. That it's not Miyikar Din, this is a good thing to do. It's a Eitzah Tova Kamash Malan that we're bringing, and you should do it, even by a famine. But Hu Din, like we said, even by Shar Tzarot, the Mishabur says it by Shar Tzarot, that we should never have any type of problems, but even by a famine, according to Tosa, also applies. The Kaf HaChaim in Simon Reish Mem brings these opinions, he brings some opinions that say we are choshesh for other tzarot, for other things that people go through, or countries go through, and he brings opinions that we're not choshesh for it, but al kapanim, they all agree that it's at least a midat chasidut, even though it's not me'ikar din. A famine is up for debate, because there are different answers to that Tosfot, but al kapanim we see both a famine and a tzara are both considered things that are good to be machmir, to avoid extracurricular activities of overindulgence. However, we'll bring a few exceptions, like I said. However, it's all mitzad a midat chasidut, and all up to the rabbanim in the time and the place to know if it's something that should be done. The Breshit Rabbah, and like I said, the Lavush quotes it also, and that's over here in our parsha, mentions dever v'cherev. It mentions before, meaning it's not only Yerushalmi, it says dever and cherev also, that one should be monea. So we see that this is really a question. But since we said it's not B'yikar Din, so we find a tremendous amount of heterim for this idea, which we want to mention. The Mishnah Berurah brings in Tav Kuf Ayin Daled Tzif Katan Yud Aleph. The night of Tefillah, if it's the night of Tefillah, so then one is permitted. The Shari Tshuva and the Taz brings that if someone's worried about his Yetzer Aleinu, so then also it is permitted. The Eshel Avram brings, and this, if we put number 2 and number 3 together, this is a heter for nowadays also. The Eshel Avram says that it was during a time where there were captives, during the time of the Eshel Avram, that's a B'chat Rav about 150 years ago, and there were captives, and they were taken into by the Tzava, and they saw that it was a big tzara, and they wanted to make a Gzeira of our Gemara over here in Ta'anit, but he says if it's an extended period of times, people can't hold up to that, it's too much, and it's also going pre-shoot, too much pre-shoot and bittul pru'orvu, and also people are not able to be ormin to the Yotzarim, and when it comes to such a situation, and also he says our door is chalosh, we are weak door, so therefore that's a reason to be veikal, and that's of course a reason why it would be relevant for us. So Rat Hashem, it should happen today, that we should be finished with this whole entire thing, everything should succeed. But even they are claiming and exclaiming that it will be a extended period of time. Look how long it's taking them to go in for some reason. It's taking them time just to go in and start the battle in the first place. So we see it's not going to be a chick-chack thing, as they say, and therefore, based on that is a big heter for what we have. So yes, in Achanami, if someone would have asked a day or 2 or 3 days immediately afterwards, right after we had the terrible, terrible tragedies of 1,300 people that were killed in a matter of hours, not even one day, in a matter of hours, mamash, a Holocaust, and in a gruesome and horrific type of way, so then we would have said that yes, maybe it's kedai to do a certain pre-shoot separation for a day or 2 or 3 in order to recognize the situation. But now that we are post and we're already 2 weeks later, so yes, there are captives, but over here we have a situation where we don't know how long it's going to take, and therefore we're not going to be machmir on you in such an extended period of time. Okay, that is number 3. Another heter, which applies especially for people, let's say in Chutz La'aretz, it says it's only if it's in your area, in your country, let's say, or in your ear, in your city, some people say. But in the area that you're not far from, I can hear bangs and booms, even though I live in Beit Shemesh. So Mamela, I would call that still considered part of my area. But if you're sitting over there comfortably with your Pina Canal sitting on the banks of the Pacific Ocean, Minastam, you're not really hearing too much, and it's not, why it should bother you, but it's not in your area, so you're not obligated, according to the Eshel Avram over there. Another one which is important, and this is relevant in general, it says that this is paskind, that it's only a tzara which is nefashit, which deals with taking life, lo aleinu, which could be taking life. Of course, that's our situation right now. But the Aruch HaShulchan says that's why we don't have a ra'av these days. We don't have such a thing as a famine, Baruch Hashem. Because he says, even though, yes, sometimes we have famine, we have droughts and things like that, but Baruch Hashem, there's always bread on the table. No one can say that their mom is starving, they're going to die from starvation, lo aleinu, except for, I don't want to say, but the captives, who, if they don't feed them properly, can be in such a situation. And like I said, that's a reason for us to suffer together with them. However, it has to be a sakana of some type of thing. So a rav for a starvation doesn't apply, but for a war, things like that, obviously, such as the one in front of us, it will definitely apply. The Mishpatei Yesharim brings, in Tavkuf Samach, that's exactly in the year 1800, there was a tremendous amount of drought and a very big anim were not able to get even bread on their table, and there were a big amount of tsar. There was no geshem, no rain. There was a tremendous amount of tsarat he brings down, and he says, "V'loi shamanu echad mi'achachamim," and there were big Talmidei Chachamim back then. We're talking about 1800. There was a Kivei Eger, there a Beit Meir. He says, and the Tosafet Shabbat and the Rav Chaim Volozhiner, he says we don't find any of the Chachamim that were Mefarsim not to be Meshamash Mita, to have pre-shoot, to separate. Could be they made Gzeira on a Ta'anit, a day of fasting, if you will. However, they didn't make such a thing, and therefore he says it must be the Resomech on the Tosafot, which I quoted to you, which is a Midut Chasidut. It's a Midut of Chasidut. That's why it is the way it is. And therefore he says a Baal Nefesh Yachmer, if one wants to be Machmer, fantastic. Of course, it should not become at the expense of someone else. You have to always have everybody in mind before you're Machmer. But he says one can, but it's not Mikra Din, it's not Mikra Lashon. He does quote based on the Rambam in the Shulchan Aruch. Rambam in the Shulchan Aruch doesn't say any of these chilukim. It just says Osir and L'Shamash Mitah. It just says Lashon Osir, and that's it. In a time of a famine or a drought, and who a din, it could be by another tzara or a milchama. Similar questions were brought to the Keren David, to the Beit Yisrael in the time of the Shoah, in the time of the Holocaust, or the Beit David was in the time of the First World War. The same question was asked. Maybe we should be pirates during this time period. Now the Shoah lasted a good 5 years, unfortunately, and it was a long period of time. That seems to be counterproductive, and they bring some of the Rabbeim at the time that did Aser, someone by the name of Rav Pollack, that he did Aser, but his Lashon is very strong. He says the Talmidei Chachamim were very against him. They even Sachaku alav. They said they mocked such a psak. They were against it. Lo yishgichu lidvarev. They said they didn't want to hear it. You're going in a time when we need to be building. You're coming and destroying. We don't do such things, he says. And therefore, it's important to be connected to the situation, but not necessarily to do this specific thing. If there's certain other tzarot that one can do, that's a good thing to do, like we'll speak out. The Nemuke, or Chai in the Moon culture, also says that it's Me'akiv the Geula. It's Ma'akiv the Geula if a person separates from his wife. Of course, we always know we want to be procreative, and we want to be active, and therefore, based on these things, it would be room to be machmer. One last heter, which I just want to bring out, is, as I mentioned before, if someone was not Mekayim the mitzvah of Puravu, Rashi says that means you are Mekayim Puravu. According to Beis Hillel, that we pass in the Gemara Yevamot Samach Daled, is a boy and a girl, as we know. However, if that's true, there's obviously the obvious question is, what's with Yosef? Yosef only had 2 boys, so why did he refrain from relations with his wife? If he had only 2 boys, he wasn't Mekayim the mitzvah of Puravu. And if he didn't Mekayim the mitzvah of Puravu, who cares that it's a starvation? So the Taz from here, no. Chashuchei badi means lo aleinu, that a person has 0 children. If he has 1 child, it's good enough. 1 child is a reason actually to be machmer. The Dad Zakenim in Parshat Miketz, which is Bali Tosfot, says that Yosef held like Beit Shammai. Yeah, of course we know. Yosef held like Beit Shammai. And they held that 2 boys are enough to be Mekayim Mitzvah Puravu. The Chatam Sofer says a more Yishar Linyan answer. He says Bnei Noach are only have to have 1 child. Their mitzvah of having a child, Kebiyachol, if that's one of the mitzvot, and Shavu mitzvah Bnei Noach, it's enough to have 1 child. It's interesting because there's a question between the brothers and Yosef, if there was a machloket, if they were Bnei Noach and not, according to the Parshat Drachim, the Mishnah Lamelech, and actually the Parshat Drachim learns that Yosef held that we are not Bnei Noach. We are actually Jews. We're not Bnei Noach. But okay, we'll leave that on the side. Al Kopanim, the Bach says it's a minhag Chasidut. And therefore we see that when a person is Mekayim Puravu, so that is a reason to be Machmer. But if not, then he should be Mekel. The Gur Arya also over there in Parshat Miketz asks a different question. What about Yitzchak Avinu? He says we know that Yitzchak Avinu was Meshamish Mitato in Grar. When he was away, he left it to Grar because there was a famine. And as we all know, Avimelech saw that he was Meshamish Mitato. I thought there was a starvation outside. I was able to do it. He says because he was literally Chashuchei Banim. He had no children. So a person who's Chashuchei Banim, it is permitted. Al Kopanim, these are the different heterim that we have mentioned, as we know, and it's not local to this. The bottom line here is that there is a halacha like this. It's good to be machmir, sort of speak, obviously in the right perspectives, and even if it's not in this specific subject, which it really should not be, basically, and especially spoken, it's an extended period of time, and it's not good for people. And not necessarily do we fast because it causes a lot of bittul Torah. They bring from Rav Yosef that even though he used to fast in the beginning for his father and mother on their yahrzeit, but later on in life he stopped because he held that if it caused bittul Torah, they'd rather you be learning Torah than fasting. It's much more productive to be learning. So if a person is going to cause himself nezek by fasting and causing himself extra tsar, it's not. Rather, he should do what I mentioned before. As the Rambam says, that is the Gemara in Ta'anit, and that's the Shulchan Aruch at the end of Siman Tov Kufayin Daled, the same thing, that if you want to see the Geula, this idea of being nois be'olim chavera, yes, that is the midah of the Geula. We can speak about Achdut, and it's also true, and Baruch Hashem, Klal Yisrael is ma'ucha together, and we're all together here, but a person should know that everything boils down to the Geula being nois be'olim chavera, to know who the Mashiach is, the one who's our salvation. The way to get the salvation here is to be nois be'olim chaver, which has to do with achdut, but that means real achdut. It means having sympathetic feelings for the situation that is at hand over there, to be able to know what is going on, not just to, if I could say, read the nose, as they say, regular with one foot on top of the other in your lazy boy chair and just watching the sights and going, wow, this is horrible. It's a lot more than that. You have to get down and get on the ground, feel the pain, feel the pound of the situation that is going on to make you feel, and that's why that will be mezakeh, a person to be able to get there out into the Geula. Who is Who is our Mashiach that we know so far? Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, he was the Mashiach that we had in the meantime. As we know, they took it out from Yetzias Mitzrayim. And what was he? His midah was, from all the midot of everything, he was the nosa be'olim chaver. He did everything just to be nosa be'olim chaver. Ad kedei kach, he went outside. Vayigdal Moshe b'yetz alachi vayer b'sivlotam. He saw their pains and he went outside and he felt the avodat parach that was within them. He went outside and he didn't just look outside of his aristocratic window inside of his palace. He went out there and carried stones on top of his back, as Chazal bring us, in order to make him feel the pain. As we mentioned from the Gemara over there by Amalek, he didn't just put karim v'ksatot, he didn't put pillows underneath his hands, he went and put some rocks underneath. Rashi says, when it's referring to Moshe Rabbeinu, Notov eina v'liboy liyot meitzer aleim. He didn't just look, he didn't just feel bad. Not an eina v'liboy, his heart and his eyes, to feel the pain, to feel where they are. Macheni nami svarecha asher katavta, you should erase me from the book that was written. He was willing to get rid of a Moshe Rabbeinu. That's just one of us. It's not like me saying, okay, just get rid of me. No, there's a Moshe Rabbeinu. He said, the Moshe Rabbeinu, the one who will never stand again, kamoto, he was willing to get rid of it just for the sake of Klal Yisrael. That was his Mesiras Nefesh, that was his love, that was his empathetic, amiti, but real, honest to goodness feelings about this incredible person that we call Moshe Rabbeinu, is willing to do it. When we know that when the Mitzri was hitting Achiv, it refers to the pasuk as Achiv, his brother, he went out to go and protect him by the sneh. It says over there, the reason why Hashem turned to him by the sneh, by the bush, and was willing to speak to him is because it said, Asura na vereh et amare hazeh. I will go now and look at this marazeh, because it had to do with feeling for the pain of Klal Yisrael. He knew that the sneh had something to do with Klal Yisrael and what it had to do, and Asura na, he was looking, he was painful. Far away in Midian, but it didn't bother him. He was still there, he was still thinking about him. He closed his eyes and he'd bodhidut, and he was still feeling the pain. He felt the pain of the soldier that is sitting on the dirt outside, or has to go inside of Gaza and has to feel it. He felt the pain of those in Eretz Yisrael that have lost so many loved ones, and we talk about 1,300 dead people, but how many people are alive who are suffering from that? Over almost 3,000 people are injured. Besides the fact, all the loved ones, we're talking about tens of thousands of people that were affected. I don't know almost anyone that doesn't know someone that lost someone. That's how serious this event is. An incredible thing. Mi ka'amcha Yisrael, that we all protect each other. I know someone who just went to a wedding yesterday, and the wedding was supposed to be in Netivot in the south, and they made him Binyanei Ummah. Binyanei Ummah is the biggest platform in Yerushalayim, and they were given the whole entire ulam for free. This is an ulam that cost 60,000-70,000 shekel to be able to go there without anything, and they were given the whole place for free to be able to do it in order to protect our people in the south, in order to be nosa be'ol im chavera. That's what we care about. And the Marsha brings down over there that from the lashon of the sugi, it's mashma that it's not just enough for a person to feel the pain. There's the Marsha over there in Ta'anit, but you also have to do something about it. Av kishu atzmayin b'tzara, and even if you don't feel it, you have to do something. And so go ahead and feel. He says Yosef wasn't in pain. Yosef was sitting very comfortably. The Rav was not affecting him. The hunger was not affecting him at all. He had a lot of food, and he still went ahead and was parish from his wife. And he said also Moshe knew that he was going to win Amalek, like I mentioned to you before, and still we see that he went ahead and did it. This is the midah of the Geula. And if it was not Moshe Rabbeinu, and not just Moshe Rabbeinu, it was also the Mashiach himself. The Mashiach himself in the Psukim, in Yeshaya and Daf Nun Gimel, and Perek Yud Gimel, and the Ramban explains explicitly there, and I can't go through all of it because it's a lot of psukim, it's a whole Perek, but basically over there it talks about he's an Ani, on a Chamor, this Mashiach. What's going on with this guy? He's the one who's going to take over the world. He seems like in a pretty bad shape. But the answer is he bears the burden of everybody else. He's Noseh Ba'olam Chavero. All the aniyut and all the troubles of everybody is going to be on his back, and therefore he's Mashiach. That's how Mashiach comes. Why? Says the Mishnah Rav Kotler says on page Tzadi Bet that the reason is because ve'alachta b'drachav. We imitate the names. We imitate HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ways. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu does something, we want to do it also. And you know what it says in the Psukim? Imo enochi b'tzar. B'kol tzaratam li tzar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes through tzar, and we go through tzar. Don't think that he's sitting up in a puffy cloud far away. Of course, we know that he's everywhere. But Uncle Padim, the idea that he's not affected by it, that's how it is. And we see it all the time by the snap. What did it say? Re'eh re'iti et ani et ani amcha. I saw the pain, the iniquity that my nation is growing from. Rashi says on the pasuk Vayar Elokim b'nei Yisrael Vayeda Elokim. What does it mean Vayeda Elokim? Not aleim lev, the same lev that we saw by Moshe Rabbeinu. Not to make comparisons, but Kebayochel Kadosh Baruch Hu gives a lev, which is obviously a anthropomorphic type of expression. Not aleim lev Elohelim enav. He didn't take his eyes away. He paid attention. He connected. He related to their situation by Matan Torah, incredible chiddush. Vayar Elokim, and when Bnei Israel were able to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'tachat raglav k'maaseh levnat sapir. They saw underneath him a stone. What does it mean they saw underneath him a stone? There's many, obviously, Kabbalistic ideas behind it, but Rashi says, B'shibud liskor tzaratam shel Yisrael. It's not enough that Hashem remembers. Hashem doesn't have to remember. We all know he's best friend in the future. There's no Indian of remembering. But he took a stone, kebiyochel, and put it underneath him, to feel the pain, to be part of it too, to be there together in the mud, together with everybody else, to be there in the tzar with everybody else, to close their eyes and try to push myself a little bit more, to be able to know what I can do for the tzibur. This is Mashiach. And the Ve'alachta, this is Moshe Rabbeinu. This is Mashiach, this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is Ve'alachta b'drachav. This is the source of Geula. This is the way it's going to do. Sometimes to take myself, to push myself a little bit more. A person's comfortable at home and he doesn't go out to daven in a minyan? Are you serious? There aren't people right now going out and fighting and doing what they need to do outside in the krav and not exactly as very comfortable. Why don't you push yourself a little bit more? Maybe make a seder which is not so comfortable. 10 o'clock at night, I have to go to bed. Now, I'm not saying to ruin your day, but it's a time when I just want to be comfortable at home and wrap up with a newspaper. Take that extra 20 minutes just during the war. Just during the war, I'm not asking you to do the whole time, to go ahead and do something when I can do. People who are in Eretz Yisrael and leave, I don't know, ask the Sheila Trav, everybody has their own specific situation for a person going through trauma, but here's the time of Imo Enochi B'tzara. This is the time to be together. And to stop and, like I said, be mitzayir the situation. Get yourself on a cold floor. Feel a little bit of pain. Maybe even fast for half a day. I'm not saying to fast to make yourself ruin yourself, but just so you just feel a little bit hungry. And try to think of those people that are suffering right now in Gaza, that are not able to get out, that are surrounded by that. Just close your eyes and put yourself in their situation. I'm not asking for traumas, and I don't want people to come in and tell me that they went through all this terrible, recognitions because of what occurred, but everyone, according to the level of where they're holding, should be able to know how to make it. And of course, if we know, going to visit, maybe if it's going to visit a sick person, going to visit a person who's going through a difficult time, going to help someone else. Again, this comes when I'm leaving my comfort zone. That's the point. The point is to do something over and beyond where I leave my comfort zone. Baruch Hashem, you give it 10%, give 11%. 11% stuck. It comes out of my comfort because 10 I have to give, but 11 I don't. And when you leave your comfort zone, that's the pain. Then you're able to feel the pain. Then you're able to connect, because the whole schus of the Geula is built on this. One new Kabbalah, one new thing that I can do to actually feel the pain, not just to go and help with the pain, not just to know of the pain, not just to be informed. We are raised as being takers, a notel instead of a noten. We have to instead transfer ourselves from being a taker from a giver. I have to tell you, I did hear a lady on the radio. I think she, I don't know her level of religiosity, I have to say, but she says she wakes up 9 in the morning to 11 at night, going and helping people. And I said her a good person, that's probably part of her job or whatever. But you see a person that her whole life was devoted just to being able to help people, and she's going out and telling people, go out and help people. She goes and speaks to people. Why was I taken aback specifically by this interview? When she was talking about how much she gives her life and how much she cares about each person. She said there was one woman who was standing on her merpeset, and she told her, I'm jumping. She was on the phone with her, and she says, I'm jumping. I had one child, I had one son, and they took him. And she knows that that's it, he's not around anymore. And she said, I can't live anymore. And she was already not married. She was Nital Min already. And she said, I can't live it. And she says, what do you mean? Do you think that's what your son would want you to do? Is that really what your son would ask you? Would he be happy and proud of you, mommy, for doing that? Because I was taken away, so I want you to go with me? Do you think that's good? Do something to make him happy. Make a Kabbalah. Make something new. Add something new to your life that you haven't done until now. That's the way to improve. That's the way to do something. That's what we do. We finish a Sefer, but we start a new one. We finish Zot HaBracha, and we start with a Breshit immediately. We start meeting it immediately because there's never an end in the Jewish world. We're always finishing with a beginning. We're always finishing, and there's always a beginning that happens afterwards. That is how we go. That is how we feel. That is our life, and that's how it is. And I'll end with a quick story of a person who was a big Rav in the town of the Shtat. He was the Rav in the town, and he came to the story said it was with Reichman, that he came and knocked on the door of the wealthy man, and he came to give a pitch about a few number of poor people that were there. It was a very blizzard outside, very cold. So he opened the door for him, and Reichman said, "Oh, the Rav of the year, Betach." He invited him in, come to the. He said, "No, I just have 2 minutes. I just have to talk to you for a minute, please." All right. So he started talking and telling him his pitch about, this honey or that honey or this situation. After 1 or 2, 3 minutes, he said, "Listen, Rabbi, I have no problem listening. Just come inside. I have a fireplace. We'll sit down with some marshmallows. Let's enjoy ourselves. Why do you have to do this?" He goes, I'm finished. That's it. Let me just finish up 1 more minute and I'm leaving. And he continued for another 2, 3 minutes. He was out there 6, 7 minutes. He said, "I'm sorry, I can't do it." He took the rabbi by the hand and he took him inside of his house, closed the door, went by the fireplace, sat next to him and goes, "Okay, now we can continue." And he told him, "I'm done." He said, "What was wrong? Why did you have to do it outside? Why do you have to, what was the big deal?" He said, No. There's a difference when a person gives tzedakah from behind his fireplace and when a person goes outside in the cold and feels what it feels not to have that fireplace yourself. All the poor people I'm speaking back, they also don't have a fireplace. They're also sitting and shivering outside. I wanted you to be Nosabel and Chaver. I wanted you to feel the pain. And maybe then the gift would not be a gift that comes from an external hand, but from an internal hand. Someone from Bifnim, a family member, not just someone who's a rich person who has the capabilities. Someone that can do it. And maybe you'll push yourself a little bit beyond your comfort zone. But even more than that, when you give, you'll give from a place of reality. B'ezrat Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring Yeshua, Bekarov, and it comes b'schut that we all are noise of all. Im chaverim, because if we take a part of it, though it takes half of the all off of them. When there's 2 ktafayim, it takes half the burden. Shabbat shalom.